How's it going, guys? Matt and Nikki here. So I got another dyno video, little pro touring deal on the dyno today. So we'll take a look at it. It's a so we got here is a '67 Chevelle. Good customer of ours recommended this customer that owns this car to us. He bought this car kind of as an unknown, so he really wasn't sure what he had here. It obviously has got some suspension work, some wheels. It's got some. It actually turns out that it's got a it's kind of a back half deal where it's got the aftermarket frame rails in the back, and obviously narrow. It's got a 9-inch. And we just have it up on the dyno today to kind of get a baseline on where it's at. He didn't know what it was, what it had. Obviously, we'll take a look under the hood here. Obviously, it's got twin turbochargers on it. So, but again, he didn't know what it was, what it had, what it was supposed to do for power. And he kind of had a plan for it. He wanted to make some big horsepower with it. So we decided to put it on the dyno to kind of see where we were at with it, kind of to start out. So I did some pulls, watched the air fuels, watching timing, watching boost. Actually had to cut the first couple runs short because we were running into some issues on the tune. So yeah, basically what we're coming away with here is that it's kind of a turbo. I should say it's an eBay kit. So as you can see, it's non-intercooled, which that kind of poses a problem right off the bat. I mean, it's doable. Obviously, it'll work, but not ideal. So turbos definitely are like a no-name type of eBay stuff. The wastegates and the blow-off valves are all like no-name. Obviously these blow-off valves, they look like tiles, but they're copies. Gates are something similar to a tile copy. It's all working. It's all making about 8 pounds of boost. But yeah, not making a ton of power. Again, stuff like this that we get in stuff like this quite a bit. That we kind of got to work through and sort through and kind of establish a baseline with it. So I started doing a little tuning on it, and just to kind of see if we could kind of maximize where we were with this specific combination. So I mean, it turns out, and you can see here, we're pushing a little bit of oil past the oil cap. So, and that's, motor seems healthy, but I think we got a catch can PCV system that's not properly routed, not properly set up. It turns out this is the only hose that's venting to anything, under boost. The catch can really isn't doing anything, so got some stuff that maybe we'd want to reconfigure. So yeah, just pushing a little bit of oil out of the cap because we're obviously there's just nowhere for the crankcase vapor to go. So, but yeah, I'm going to, like I said, I did a couple working runs already. We were kind of hoping it was going to do a little bit more than this, but again, it's a completely stock 2002 5.3 out of like a Silverado, so it's like a junkyard motor deal, and and the engine is completely stock, other than it's got a different intake manifold on it. I believe that's an LS6 intake, LS1 or LS6, like a Camaro / Corvette style intake manifold versus a truck intake that would have normally came on it. But it has the stock. To me, it looks like it's got an aftermarket wiring harness, but it does have a stock P01, like a 411 computer for tuning. So easy to tune, but 80 pound-an-hour injectors as far as I can tell. Yeah, so yeah, I'm gonna set the camera down, do another pull on it, and we can take a look at the dyno graphs, kind of see where I worked up from, and from where it was to where it is now, and where we're gonna just leave it for now, and until we decide how far we're gonna go with it. So let's make a pull and see what happens. All right, let's take a look at this, talk about this a little bit more. So let's see here. I'll bring up these graphs. All right, so I got a whole bunch of them open here. We'll take all of them away. Let's look at the last one first. And then we'll kind of work back and kind of show you guys what we deal with sometimes when we get stuff brought into us. So you can see 416, 441 torque. So yeah, I mean, so contrary to what normal, most of you guys see on the internet when you got a junkyard 5.3 with turbos on it, everyone and their brother makes, 750, 850, 1,000, whatever. So this is a really good example of more real world what you can expect with a very, very, very basic setup on something like this. So now what we can do is kind of compare like my first run, or one of my first runs here. There's my first run. That's without doing any tuning. That was before I even touched anything on it. I just put it up here, screwed my wideband into it, and made a pull. That's what it did. So I was cutting it off early because I was seeing some stuff in the air fuel and in the timing that I didn't like, and obviously you can see there was an issue there. Look at the torque was completely dying off. It was way rich here, and then it was leaning out up top, and then I was actually getting, if we look a couple more graphs in, what was happening when I was working the tunes up, it was actually failing the mass airflow sensor because the tune wasn't set up right. So what was happening here is it was trying to just revert back down to the VE table when it was seeing too much airflow. There's limits in the PCMs, even back to these earlier PCMs, there's mass airflow correlation limits, and this car is still running an old GM mass airflow sensor, those earlier mass airflow sensors, which aren't the best for boost tuning like this, but it's, for such a low amount of airflow, it's working. Yeah, so it was actually hitting that limit. The mass airflow sensor, the computer fails the map, stops looking at the map, and then just reverts to the volumetric efficiency table. And since this vehicle still has the stock 1-bar map sensor on it, the stock VE table's not even close to putting enough fuel in it. So then it was just dropping out air fuel, then I'm letting off early again. So that was going on there. So from there, I come back to some of these other working runs. So then I got it sorted out. You can see I worked it up to about, I'll back up. The other thing it wasn't doing was it was not opening the throttle plate all the way. I was only getting about 90% throttle. So then I fixed that, got the mass airflow sensor dialed in to where it needs to be, and we crested 400. So then we hit 400. This is all hitting about 8 pounds of boost. Added a little bit of timing, added a little bit more timing, and then at 413, that was kind of a hot run. 416 is the one you just saw in the video. That's about the same timing as the 413. So you can see torque is identical. The IATs, because this thing is non-intercooled, were just a smidgy cooler. So it made 413 to 416. The other thing we're seeing on this car is we have what's probably not a very well balanced drive shaft. So I'm getting a lot of driveline vibration, and you can see that in the dyno graph where it's getting these jagged. I got 2 spots, and I can feel it in the car where, and I'll go back to just a single graph where you can see that. So yeah, you can see here and up here, and I actually could rev the engine higher, but it's the vibration actually getting to the point where it makes me a little bit nervous with the drive shaft. Maybe there's something not balanced right, and I've had drive shafts come apart on the dyno, and it's not pretty. It's kind of scary. So when something's coming across the shop at 130 miles an hour. So, but yeah, so this is, I know this is going to be a little bit humbling, but this is how you throw a junkyard motor with just 2 turbos, no intercooler, 91 octane fuel, no E85, no water meth, completely stock 5.3, stock cam, other than the intake manifold. And that's really where you end up. Now, if you put a cam in this thing, like a turbo cam, and you ran it on E85 and you put an intercooler on it, and you turn the boost up to 18 pounds, that's a completely different story. Totally different story. You're going to see, then we're going to start seeing, just those changes doesn't sound like much, but then you start to see in that 700 to 800 range. So, but it's a starting point. You know, if the customer wanted something that was way more powerful than this, and we would have to do some work to it. I mean, I pulled a valve cover on the motor. It's, you know, looks like a dirty old junkyard 5.3, nothing crazy. But so here's my Datalog. Air fuel, I went a little rich. No intercooler. I mean, just that quick dyno pull. Intake air temps are 120 at the top, starting at 79. So you can see, normally turbocharged cars, turbocharged cars with an air-to-air intercooler, you're not really seeing that much of a increase in air temps like that. Even on the dyno, we'll see like a, you know, if it's intercooled properly at that low boost level, we really wouldn't see any increase in IAT, maybe 10 degrees. But this is obviously climbing like 40 degrees. You know, obviously no intercooler. Those turbos, the minute they start compressing air, they start making heat, and without an intercooler to cool the charge back down, it's just gonna, you know, it's going into the engine. So yeah, air fuel. You can see again, I'm back to my HP tuners here, reading in lambda. I'm pretty smooth. I got it a little rich on the top end, but I'm gonna leave it like that for now, just because it's safe, and with no intercooler at the top, I'd rather have it a little bit rich, and you know, extra fuel cools things down just a little bit. So. The other thing I should mention too that will affect the dyno curves is I am not getting a torque converter lockup on this thing. It is commanding 100% on the torque converter duty cycle, and I'm not getting any lockup. So you can see here, torque converter slip at the start of the pull is 400, so that's not locked up. You can see pulse width on the torque converter is 100%. So there's something wrong there. There's an issue inside the trans, or inside, you know, the torque converter, just for whatever reason. And you know, at the top, I'm only slipping, you know, obviously as the engine winds out and the torque converter starts to couple up as RPM builds, but it's still slipping. So we're probably losing 30 to 40 horsepower, what we're reading at the rear tire, having that, you know, I've talked about that in some of my other videos. When you don't lock up a torque converter on the dyno, it can really skew results. And I shouldn't say skew results, but it can just read lower. It will just make, it just does not read as high because some of that power is being sapped up by the by the torque converter. So timing, 17, 18. I mean, these truck engines are low compression at 8 pounds of boost, even non-intercooled. I do have the, you know, in the calibration, if you go in here, and I always set these up, and a lot of guys like, this thing was almost zeroed out. This is the intake air temp timing table. So what this table does is, as the intake, and you can modify ignition timing based on intake air temp. So this thing was pulled down to where it wasn't pulling any timing until like 150, which that's just dangerous in my eyes, especially on E85. You can get away with it, but on 91, this guy's from Wisconsin, they have 91 octane fuel up there, and that's just recipe for disaster. You get it driving this thing around on a summer day, and you get on it and try to wind out a couple gears. The intake air temps are going to easily go to 150, and with timing not being pulled up until that point, that's how you launch a piston. So even on 8 pounds of boost, again, but just no intercooling, the intake air temps start getting that hot, and it's a recipe for detonation and pre-ignition. So yeah, I modified that. Obviously, I have it start pulling timing about 122, and even that's a little bit aggressive, a degree at 122, 2 degrees at 131. But I did, you know, obviously, so going back to the Datalog, if this thing is on the street and he's cruising it around and the IETs do climb, it's going to start pulling timing away from where I have it set here. So this is kind of where it made power up until this point. And usually what I do on these timing curves, you know, on boosted cars especially, I'll kind of work the timing up. And when you start seeing like where you're adding 1 more degree of timing, and you see like 4 more wheel, that's it. You're adding any more timing from there, you might get 1 more horsepower, but it's really not worth it at that point. You're just really starting to push lean on something for, you know, that's obviously you're hitting the octane limit, or you're just hitting the MBT of the engine. So that's a pretty standard way of you know, obviously going back to those dynographs I kind of showed you as I worked up, you know, I worked the timing up a little bit, gained, you know, we gained another 6 wheel, something like that, and then that was it. That's all I wanted to go. And I tried another degree, didn't do anything really. It made another 3, and then that's just where you're going to leave it. So that 416 number is where we're going to be. So yeah, just want to make a little quick video on this hot rod. It's I mean, it's there's a lot of potential here for sure, and we're going to, you know, again, this was kind of just a baseline, throw a little tune on it from where it was at, make sure it's at least drivable and he can go cruising around when the weather gets nice. And the customer had some bigger plans for it, so we're going to talk to him about what we want to do. But I mean, it sure is a nice looking car. Chevelles are definitely cool. They're another, again, they're for pro touring builds right now. They're real popular. We see quite a few of them. So yeah, for now, that's going to be pretty much it on this car. We got obviously we got a lot more work going on in the shop right now, so I'll keep making these dyno videos. I know we're not blowing stuff up in the dyno and having somebody spray nitrous in the inlets. This is crazy, exciting stuff like that sometimes just people want to see. But this is what we do day to day at Nicky, and I just like sharing it with you guys and kind of going over the processes we do on the dyno for getting this stuff tuned up. And, you know, so guys can go cruise these cars around, have a bunch of fun. So until next time, guys, thanks for watching. Talk to you later.